We are back with another episode of Life in Law, and today we have a very special guest joining us. We have Brian Quinn. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
And would you want to start off by just telling our listeners a little bit briefly about yourself?
I'm 44 years old. I live in Pennsylvania. I'm actually an ER nurse, so I literally help people for a living, which came natural to me. I am a father of three. And I had a stepson as well. My three children are special needs, nonverbal autistic, which has made this very hard, and they're young as well. I've been going through one of the worst divorce situations you can go through, from false accusations down, and I've been learning a lot about this growing problem called the silver bullet divorce that's taken its toll across the country. I've learned a lot about how courts are incentivized to do things. You know, they don't really take into consideration the law. They have their minds made up before you go in there. And I used to hear stories about problems in the family court system, aside from divorce issues, them taking children away from families, whatever they can to keep their constituents employed, working. They just kind of do what they want and they're unchecked. And it slowly became, in fighting my own situation, a passion of mine that I feel like something needs to change in this country. And a lot of people need to speak up. We're at a time where we have the power. Social media is growing. And eventually it's going to get to the point where enough people are talking about this that it can't be ignored any longer. So we'll see what happens from there.
And you have a platform, you have a page on TikTok, correct? What's your name on there?
The TikTok page was Family Court Fraud, and it wasn't really designed so much for me to get a following. I started the page out of frustration. There was all these threats of gag orders and everything else. The court really tries to shut you up. They don't want you talking about anything. So I was like, let me create an anonymous page and let me just start sharing little things about the court. And then I got to the point where I was just pushed over the edge. I'm going to just start telling all, let me just one step at a time, share this. And that was probably about only a month ago. And the amount of views and responses and messages, it just took off. That wasn't my intention. I'm not a social media influencer. I had no intention of being out in the open public with all of this. I just wanted my story to be out there. God forbid something happens to me in this court system. I want people to know what really happened. And part of it was obviously you want to win in your situation. And this isn't the road I wanted to take in my divorce, for my kids, nothing. This was not the plan. But I figured if somehow a blueprint was set, as far as suing my spouse for malicious prosecution, defamation, if it came to that there was some kind of penalty asserted to her for all these false allegations, executing this silver bullet divorce, I think a lot of it, the way it was planned out, came from her attorney, who was notorious for this as I started looking through court documents. If there's no accountability, it's not going to change. If there's no punishment for a crime, it's not going to change. There's lawyers online that say it's almost malpractice to not use the silver bullet method because there's no downside. Nobody's ever prosecuted for making false allegations of abuse. I talk about that a lot. You hear celebrities and athletes who are falsely accused, and then they file their suits against them. And in the end of the day, they end up dropping their suits or settle it. They really get nothing out of it, and there's no penalty to the accusers. This seems to be a problem since the late 70s when family court was coming together and the federal government enacted Title 40. They gave them all these powers, responsibilities, and they go unchecked. The family court system really doesn't answer to anybody. They'll tell you can report this judge, file to the Supreme Court, blah, blah, blah. But there's no boss or anybody coming down and penalizing judges for anything. You don't hear these stories. Once in a blue moon, you'll hear about a judge being arrested for some kind of crime, but it's very few and far between. People don't realize how big this country is. There's a famous situation out in Missouri that just went wild, RICO charges, which I still have to read into more. But apparently there's an attorney that has evidence of corruption, and he's filing lawsuits, which we're waiting to see the outcome of that. But it'll probably be 6 months down the road before we get an update on that situation. But I think the more people that start coming out on top, fighting back, fighting their case, and winning, getting something out of it, it'll stop it from continuing in the future. And that's my ultimate goal.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of these public officials, even if they don't like to admit it, they do get bothered when people make these posts on social media. They do get bothered when people are going in the comment sections of their government official pages and saying, hey, what are you going to do about such and such judge? What are you going to do about such and such department that's violating our rights? And even if they ignore it, it does leave a stain, especially now close to election season. I had one public official by the name of Aaron Stewart, who's the mayor of a city in my state called New Britain. And this is the city that mishandled 4 separate sexual abuse investigations involving my minor daughter, which I was accused of lying. It's almost the opposite. People think silver bullet, you accuse somebody of abuse when they didn't abuse you in order to get an edge in the court case. They're so like indoctrinated that that's what everybody does, that when there's real abuse, they accuse people of lying and they accuse them of coaching. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I had no idea that that was even a possibility, because I thought, like a very naive person, like many people who've never experienced it themselves, I thought there's no way that I could lose my daughter. You know, if she reports that she's been abused, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to report it to DCF. I'm going to, listen. They said, take her to the forensic interview. I did all those things. And then I went to the family court and they said, oh, because you did all of those things, now we're going to take your daughter and give her to the person that she's accusing of abuse. So do you want to talk a little bit more about kind of with your research, with what you've seen, and explain a little bit more about the silver bullet approach, where is it something that you think that you've seen? It's such a big culture now in the family court system that it's part of it, and it's like really hard to get away.
Yeah, it's almost without a doubt. Like any attorney that finds a client that's willing to say or lie or do anything, it's almost like a guarantee, especially in my case. So the purpose of the silver bullet is they create a situation where 100% custody will go to the one parent. So they will falsely accuse you, and despite any evidence or anything, I've learned this in my situation, the judge will ask, or the lawyer or whoever will ask, all they need the person filing the PFA or temporary restraining order to say is they feel there's a threat or danger to them. They don't have to prove any threat. They don't have to prove any danger. And that's enough to where the judge can justify her saying, all right, we're going to give this abuse order, this protection order. And once that starts, you're going to go, custody is going to happen. You know, they file one for the children too. They don't care. They'll just write anything in there. The judge is going to immediately give 100% custody to the filing parent. Once they get the final order in, they immediately will sue you for child support, spousal support, mortgage assistance, which they call mortgage deviation. That creates a situation where the maximum possible amount that you could pay to your spouse through the family court system is then asserted. And with Section 4D, Title 4D of the Social Security Act, the federal government will essentially pay the local courts, almost like they call it a reimbursement, or just fund them for their work efforts. This was designed to track down deadbeats who weren't paying support. So they can receive up to 66 cents for every dollar they're collecting in child support. Now, if you're the family court system, why are we going to exhaust our resources chasing deadbeats that don't have any money? We have hardworking fathers who we're just going to start garnishing their wages and report to the federal government, hey, we're collecting $4,000 from this person every month. We're collecting $3,000. They're essentially filing that they're doing all this work to collect the child support, and the federal government's just handing these courts money. So they're incentivized for causing these scenarios, which just shows total bias in the court system. And as far as it's not just men, the more people I talk to, it seems like the more successful person seems to be the victim of this situation. The hardest part, or the most common one-sided situation of it, is the abuse allegations is generally towards men. It's a lot easier to claim abuse from a man, stuff like that, than it is like a woman abusing a man, just from the people I've talked to. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of successful people who've just been like rear-ended from the courts, people who've had a spouse that's involved in the court system, whether they're a defense lawyer or something, they know people. They seem to get shut down when they go to the court system. There's no innocent until proven guilty in the family court system. It's always guilty until proven innocent. And even if you prove your innocence, we're still going to treat you as guilty. So it's definitely an uphill battle with these court systems.
Yeah, and something you said I thought was a little interesting, where you said that it's a lot easier for a woman to accuse a man of abuse And I think that because of it, they sort of came up with the other side of this where they can make a scam where, you know, it wouldn't make sense for a man to accuse a woman of abusing him. So instead, the man accuses the woman of lying about him abusing her. And so that's how they flip it around on women now. And so I know you brought up Title 4D, and you're absolutely right about, you know, the federal government reimburses states 66 cents per dollar spent on child support enforcement, not even what they collect, just enforcement. So if they set up a big building and they hire 50 people with state salaries and full pensions and all that, and it costs them 50 million, they're going to get, you know, 40 million matched. And so it's uncapped, it's unregulated. And I actually looked into and did the numbers and did the math, and they pitched it as saying, like, first of all, Congress never had the right to issue that order to enact the Social Security Act in the first place, because Congress is only allowed to regulate commerce, not domestic relations. So by Congress entering in Title 4D and all that stuff, that should have been abolished, and it still should. But since it gave in all of these, basically they had to get people to vote for it. So they pitched it as, oh, all of these women are leeching off the state because they're collecting welfare. So let's create this federal program so that we can have the states be incentivized to go after these so-called deadbeats that are leaving their you know, mother of their children, and they're not paying support, so that then that mother is forced to get it from welfare. So in theory, it sounds good, right? But then in reality, it evolved into this like racketeering, like high sophisticated, like criminal racket that they're doing. And you know, there's so many financial incentives with the child support enforcement. And also, people don't realize this, is that that money also funds the pension of these judges. And if you try to go sue in federal court, the standard is that they'll say that you can't control the state, and the state is sovereign. And they basically say that the federal courts can't do anything because the domestic relations abstention doctrine, saying, oh, domestic things are reserved to the states. So the way that it's been set up with all these doctrines and case law, which none of them supersede the Constitution. It doesn't matter what any judge says. None of them supersede the Constitution. But because for decades and decades, it's been the status quo, they're so deeply embedded in that with the case law that good luck getting them to agree with you. And you're going to have to go all the way. And then we all know the Supreme Court can just decline to take your case. So if the appeals court is corrupt, like it is in the Second Circuit, you're screwed. So, you know, it's crazy because, like, how is this legal? It's basically turning children into commodities. And like you said, like, it's not just only the parent that's more successful, it's the parent that's not an abuser. Because, like, it's usually like, if somebody's a good parent, they're either being accused of falsely accused of abuse or falsely accused of lying about abuse. And then they're like criminalized. And then they know that that parent is going to do anything. They'll pay for lawyers. They'll do all the programs. They'll do anything they say to show, look, I'm a good parent. While the other one violates orders, abuses the kids, puts them in danger. And in my experience, it's like, once they've established, okay, we're gonna rig you with the silver bullet, there's no going back. Even if you turn around the next day and file for a TRO citing that you watched them like physically assault your child and it's on video, the court will deny it. But the other person can say, oh, they looked at me the wrong way, and you're getting a warrant for your arrest. You see, yeah. Have you experienced that as well?
Oh, the whole the threat of arrest has been so real. So the second I was served, and I've talked before, the police have been nothing but friendly, like cooperative, pleasant. Like, they know what's going on better than anybody. Immediately after I was removed from my home and served a PFA, I told a little bit of my story online, and she called the police trying to accuse me of violating the PFA. And I don't know if it's called a PFA in Connecticut. I know each state calls it something different. I hear temporary restraining order a lot, regular restraining order. It's just protection from abuse is what Pennsylvania uses. So I got a call immediately, and I'm trying to share my story. I'm essentially the victim in all this and just trying to get out the truth. I posted a video. It's been on my TikTok account. I posted text messages, like the psych medication she was abusing, all this stuff through her history to show it's false. And she calls the police. They call me and are like, she's trying everything to get you arrested. And me and my sergeant were talking. You didn't violate the PFA. You didn't do nothing wrong. You know, you're not calling her. You're not near the house. You're not text messaging her. You haven't contacted her in any way. But she's doing whatever she can. And if you even pocket dial her, she's going to call us to come arrest you. And that's out of our hands. So just be wary of that. I immediately, like, her phone was still in my account. So I canceled her phone at that point. Like, I don't want to know her number. I don't want to fall into this situation, this trap. I'm going to, like, cover myself left and right. Even like now with possession of my children, I have apartments or cameras in every angle of my apartment just so I can't be accused. I video record all of our child custody exchanges, which take place in front of the police station where there's cameras recording. But it's not easy to get access to those videos if something does happen. She tried to object. She sent me messages in the Family Wizard app. I don't consent to you recording, blah, blah, blah. I was like, why would you not consent to me recording? What are you trying to pull? And then there was one day I didn't have the camera out. And she had called the local police in the area I'm living in now. And they had called me and said, listen, she's making claims that you are harassing her, trying to talk to her during the exchanges. And I was like, you almost have to laugh how ridiculous it was. I'm like, listen, you guys got cameras. Go check your cameras. I've done nothing of the sort. She did the same nonsense with the Hatfield police. And he's like, oh, yeah, she actually called the Hatfield police again prior. They kicked it up to us because they're tired of dealing with it. And the officer was nice about it. He's like, yeah, we can see nothing happen, you know. And by the way, feel free to keep recording. I guess she tried to call them complaining about me recording on my own as well. So that was a big ordeal. And it's one of those, I'm glad I did it because I don't know what would have happened if I don't have cameras recording. She could have been calling saying every one of these exchanges, I'm harassing her, I'm threatening her, putting my hands on her, something like that. She could claim I'm doing something to the kids in my apartment. And I think just because I've had these cameras up, that none of that has happened. So it's sad that we're in a world where you have to protect yourself. This whole thing, I just wanted a divorce from her. I was tired of her getting drunk and hitting me. Like, the nonsense was out of hand. I'm tired of sleeping in the garage. I've slept in my car. It's like, enough is enough. Like, she's falsely accused me in the past when she was out of her mind crazy. She blamed it on postpartum depression. I actually went to jail back then. I had felony charges filed on me. I was thrown in a cell. And I'm sitting there like, what is going on? I didn't even know why I was in the cell. But it's all based on lies, you know. I have video of that night where she's trying to hit me, but as long as I held the camera in front of her, she stopped. And then her mother came to the house. And this is where mental health, I didn't realize, I don't know if you want to call it genetic, bred sometimes. Her and her mother both have severe mental health issues. And I'm on the steps holding my son, and my wife starts hitting me. And I call for her mother, can you get her? And the mother comes over and starts hitting me as I'm holding my son. So I end up... I have some videos I'm going to actually share to my TikTok account soon. I've held on to these and I didn't want to put them out there. But now it's like, here's the time. People need to know the truth. Like, the fact that I have video is like insane. You know, I'm just glad I thought to pull up my camera at some point. So my wife confessed to the ADA that she confessed to everything, that I didn't hit her, that this was like she was having mental health issues, you know, the whole nine. And I foolishly gave her a second chance. The charges were initially withdrawn, and then the charges were eventually expunged. They didn't even make me come down to the courthouse. They took care of everything on their end, which makes you wonder what else was going on. I later found out my wife had told me that her mother had a nephew, my wife's cousin, who was a homicide detective at the same precinct that I was taken to. And she said her mother had asked this detective for a favor to have someone jack up charges on me. So yeah, I was charged, accused of strangling her, the whole nine, like all these crazy things. I'm like, this is insane. Like, where is this coming from? And I'm an idiot for going back to her. Like, I bought the whole postpartum depression excuse. I didn't realize how bad the mental health issues were. It was something that almost affected my job, but hasn't, fortunately. Yeah, it's scary, like, just what accusations can do, despite even having evidence. So I do plan on sharing some more stuff on my TikTok when I get the chance.
And what happened with those charges? Are they still open?
No, they were expunged. Like I said, the ADA, they took care of everything. They didn't even make me come to the courthouse. They said, "Could you just fill out this paper and mail it back to us?" And they took care of it quickly too. It wasn't even a delay. I was so shocked. And looking back, I think it was because of the shady stuff that happened. Like my wife confessed about her cousin detective, like asking for favors, her mom making all this up. The whole thing is like when the police came the third time that night, I was the one that called them. And this was after I was getting hit and my knee was bruised. I'm like, panic, like, what do I do? This is insane. Her mother had ran out and an ambulance showed up first and started saying, he's strangling her, he's hitting her, like all just making the accusations first. And they don't want to talk to you or hear it. They just came in and cuffed me and drugged me out. It was insane. That since I had a bruise on my knee, they forced me to sign in to a hospital nearby, which, it's local to me and I'm a nurse. So it's such a small world. People have seen me there. It's kind of embarrassing in a way. They're not even allowed to force you to sign into a hospital if you're coherent, but they don't care at that point. So it's been like one nightmare after the other. And it was a long process of trying to forgive and forget. And we built like this huge life together. We had such an amazing home. With the special needs kids, I built this giant play yard in our backyard. We had an in-ground pool. We had a great view open to the woods where we woke up to the deer eating every morning. We had everything. And she couldn't get it together. She was constantly chasing the Adderall with the Red Bull, caffeine shots in her drinks from Wawa, and she was bouncing off the walls. And I saw the signs there, and I would send messages, texts like, listen, you're acting really bizarre. I'm getting a little concerned. And then with the abuse, I would say, listen, you can't keep hitting me like this. This is getting out of hand. You drink a little bit of alcohol and you're off the wall. And I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be mixing alcohol with psych meds. But the family court didn't want to hear it. They shot down every time I tried to show a picture of her meds. I tried to show a text message. I tried to show the video of me sleeping in the garage. This judge just shut me down. She taunted me. And I knew from the beginning something was going on, something bizarre, but I didn't quite know what I know now, which is insane. I didn't know how to handle myself in a courtroom, which I'm slowly learning. Just learn to object to everything, get it on the record, because if you want to appeal something, put your objections out there. Let the judge know you see what's going on. You're kind of aware of what's going on. There's going to be something coming up after this. Even in the recent hearings, the judge tries to cut you off. They try to sell their narrative. Nope, this is how it's going to go. You're the father, or we'll say the mother, for example, but you're the one who's doing this. We're just going to paint you the picture. You're going to pay all the child support. It's going to be custody for her, and we're just going to keep beating you down as much as we can. So yeah, there's more court cases coming. I'm fighting the civil suit literally all day. I'm going to be sitting here trying to read objections, start Googling paragraphs. A lot of what they filed, I feel like he had a ChatGPT bot like type up his objections. I'm just looking at the punctuations and stuff. I'm like, is this supposed to be like this? And I'm sure she paid him a lot of money. But that's the other aspect of it. Like, essentially, if we've spent $80,000 in lawyers collectively, that's $80,000 that is coming away from my kids. Where's the sense in that? But we'll see.
So right now you're pro se.
Yes.
Right? And when have you always been pro se, or at what point did you decide to get rid of your lawyer?
So that was probably the best decision I made. In the beginning, I went to the initial PFA hearing pro se, thinking this is an open and shut case. I had the evidence. After that, I hired a lawyer, and after I've talked to a bunch of people, they told me if I did show up to that PFA hearing with a lawyer, that lawyer probably would have made me agree to like a temporary PFA for like 3 months, like their cooling down period. And then what happens is they extend it. They just keep extending it past the divorce. Now, since I didn't have a lawyer and we never got to that point, I was never going to agree to anything. The judge issued her a 3-year PFA against me, which was the maximum time possible. So I hired a lawyer. I was like, you're distraught. Your mental health is so poor. The depression of what's happening to you is so poor. I'm working overtime. I get a lawyer. So I hired this lawyer to file the appeal. And this lawyer is like, this proves your case, making it seem like it's an open and shut case. Like, we'll get this appealed and then I'll represent you for everything else. So I initially pay her the money for that. And then, weeks later, she's asking for another $5,000. Oh, the PFA appeal and to represent you for the divorce is separate. I'm like, all right, here we go. Now we're at $10,000, and then it's like $15,000. The first lawyer I spent $30,000 on. So she started delegating everything to a new junior associate who I never signed off on, and it's not in our written agreement. An emergency custody hearing was held at some point. It was like one thing after the other. Just there was no rebuttal to the accusations. And I'm slowly starting to get suspicious that my attorney is talking to her attorney. It was almost like a mapped out plan. So the more you start talking to people online, hearing other people's stories, it's making sense. Now, I overheard my attorney, the first attorney, talking to her junior associate, and she was saying she doesn't think that my wife's lawyer knows what she's doing. Like, where does she think the money's coming from? And I heard that, and she swung it to me as, well, we don't want them to cost you your job with these accusations of abusing the children and stuff, and where is she going to get the support at? But now that I look back, I feel like, where does she think the money's coming from? Where's the money coming from? Her law firm and my wife's lawyer, because I'm the one paying my wife an abundance amount. I'm the one paying the lawyer. Like, they had me working left and right, and they were going to extort every dollar from me. There's a family court lawyer does not care about winning. They care about billing. That's the most important rule I've learned in all of this. And I took a chance. After I terminated my first lawyer for not showing up to the motion to compel hearing, she showed up 90 minutes late to my custody hearing. She looked hungover. I was like, this is ridiculous. I hired a second lawyer thinking it would be better. And it was no better whatsoever. They did nothing. They literally filed nothing unless I said, file this. They were sending the bills left and right. Like, here's another $3,000 bill. Here's another $4,000 bill. So after I got 10,000 in with him, I terminated him. I demanded all the files be sent over to me, everything he told me he had, all the information from the motion to compel. And I start going through it, and I realized he didn't have her bank statements. The basis of the whole discovery process was her bank statements that he told me he had, and he didn't. So I terminated him. I was like, listen, it's time to start learning how to file court documents, learning what needs to be a part of them, start using some of the previous ones that were filed, just like for the formatting, getting to understand what they look like, look for samples online, because that's how you learn. You learn from copying. That's everything in the world. When you learn from copying. So I started, I filed my motion to compel on my own, and I won. And I was like, wow, this is big. This feels good to finally get a win. Not only does this motion say she has to finally turn over everything in the next 20 days, but it says that the threat of sanctions will be imposed on her and her attorney. And I was walking around on cloud 9 for about 18 days. She had terminated her attorney so about 7 or 8 days later. And I'm like, all right, let me look into this. And I find out that her attorney is still on the hook for the sanctions because she was the attorney on record. And I really hated her first attorney. So I'm like jumping with joy, and not like a day or two before the 20 days hit, these bank statements show up. And while I was glad I got what I wanted, I can't tell you the depression, because I felt like there was going to be like a nail in the coffin or something. Like, if she has to pay me sanctions, her attorney has to pay me sanctions. I feel like it would have changed the whole dynamic. But anyway, it was the first sign of a win. Then I started filing the civil suit. Now, the family attorneys said, no, you don't want to go that route. You don't understand how they view you, all this other stuff, like very discouraging of it. And, you know, you listen to your attorney, you trust your attorney, you take their advice. Well, after I fired the second attorney, I'm like, you know what? No, we got to do something differently. If I keep following the blueprint that every family attorney follows across this country, I'm going to end up with the same result as every person who gets stuck in this situation. You have to do something different. So I was like, all right, let's start filing a suit. You know, malicious prosecution for the false PFA, defamation. Her mother testified to bad-mouthing me throughout the hospital where my job is. You know, these are my coworkers, people that were giving me dirty looks for a while. You got to do something. If you sit and do nothing, you will get nothing. So I did that. I'm actually in the process of like responding to the objections like we were talking about, and we'll see what comes of that. I'm at the point where I think I need to be in front of a jury of people, regular people like you and I, who can actually see what's going on, try and get out of the legal nonsense, make an objective opinion. I know with these objections, their main goal is to try and get a judge to throw it out before it gets to that point. And I don't blame them. If I was on the other side, I would be doing everything they're doing, filing as long as possible objections just to kind of sway something to get it thrown out. So we'll see what happens there. In the meantime, I'm still fighting custody, fighting to see my kids. I'm working 60 hours every week just to pay her the amount of support they ordered against me. So it leaves very little time to see my children, very little time to work on court documents. It's just like I'm a 24/7 machine right now trying to do this. And again, I think half the motivation is I'm not just doing this for me. I want to do it for the next person. I really want this to stop. I feel like this world would be a much better place if things weren't like this. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point before when you were saying about like getting objections and things on the record, especially during hearings. Like you mentioned, judges will try to cut you off and talk over you, and they are notorious for that. And like after a certain point, I talk over them back. I interrupt them back. And if they continue to try to talk, I will just talk louder so that the court reporter hears me and puts it on the record, because I don't care if they're listening or not. I'm stating it so that it's on the transcript.
Yes.
And I think that like, it's important to say like, I'm informing the court that my intention to appeal. This way it's like, if there's things that you want to put on the record evidence, that's why the judges turn around and block you from showing evidence, which you described being told that you can't show photos, you can't show videos. I was told on the day they took my daughter, Angelina, I was told I couldn't even be sworn in. Imagine that. You go into your hearing, but only one person, only the defendant gets sworn in and not the plaintiff. Is that considered a trial or a hearing? It's almost like it's like mock trial. And, I went to law school for 2 years, and I did mock trial in law school. And the way that they do mock trial is like meticulously perfect in the procedure and due process. Everything is perfect. They wait till you're done. You do your opening statement. You have your this, your that. In real life, in family court, they act like due process doesn't exist. And I think a lot of this is like unique to the family court and juvenile court and CPS courts and stuff, because a lot of times they are confidential. In my state, anything from juvenile court is completely fully confidential, which means any DCF cases. I've seen records from people's cases from DCF where it's like clear fraud, but they think they can get away with it because they're like, oh, haha, no one's allowed to see this because it's confidential. But it's like, they also will control the upper level appellate courts because all these judges are buddies. And like, especially when you're in small states and states that are like tightly knit legal communities, or even within counties, you have it where it's like, okay, you mentioned before, there's no oversight. The federal government relies on the states to police themselves in these judiciaries. So if you're saying there's corruption, and they say, okay, you can make a judicial complaint. In my state, you can make a complaint and you send it to the Judicial Review Committee. Who's on the Judicial Review Committee? Like 3 judges, two regular citizens who work at like multi-billion-dollar corporations that have contracts with Department of Defense, and a couple lawyers, and that's it. So basically, it's like bar members that are all buddies that have lunches together. And when I was in law school, they were teaching us to go to networking events where it was literally just like hanging out at country clubs, having like a 7-course meal and schmoozing with each other. And so it's like when people say like, oh, this person's a good lawyer, this person's a good lawyer, usually that means this person knows the judge and they can use their influence to go their way. And it seems like when people are pro se, or sui juris, or whatever people like to call it, and I know different states have different terminology, if you don't have a lawyer and you're representing yourself, they like bully you, they intimidate you. They don't want that because they want to make money from the lawyers want to make money. And these lawyers are like hard up for money because people are starting to realize that most of them are incompetent, and most people don't have the money, can't afford it anymore. Like, look at the economy. People are struggling to eat and pay rent. The cost of housing is like astronomical. And it's like they'll say, oh, if you want a fee waiver, we're going to deny your fee waiver. Like, that's what they would do to me. So it's like, even if you're like completely broke and you have nothing left, they'll still block you any which way they can. So yeah. It's a little crazy. I wanted to ask, you mentioned you had a civil suit. Is that in state or federal court?
That's state.
Okay, and it's currently active or ongoing?
Yes. Yes, like it's still fresh. I filed it not too long ago. Like I said, I just received their objections on day 21, and they had 20 days to actually submit them. Ironically, I had filed my motion intent for default judgment the same day that they had submitted their objections. I'm not even going to challenge the 20 days because the judge is going to say, okay, they're 1 day late. It's not going to matter. We're going to accept these and start reviewing them. So, yeah, that's going to be a battle in itself. Again, I'm just sitting here trying to get through the paperwork part of it just to get into the courtroom. I feel like I can't find anybody that's done that, which I think would set like a big precedent for, okay, you make false accusations against someone, they will sue you. I have a Supreme Court petition pending. I may not hear something for another 6 months. Even if the Supreme Court doesn't overturn the PFA, I still have enough evidence, I think, to argue for the malicious prosecution case. I can show like the attacks, the text messages, things like that. It's an uphill battle either way. I'm already halfway through this 3-year PFA sentence. If the Supreme Court hears my case and doesn't turn over to PFA, it's not really going to negatively affect me that much. I think a lot of that is about the principle of the case. Again, that one, it's up in the air. I don't know how that's going to go. I haven't had an update since June of when everything was submitted. Her lawyer had filed their rebuttal. Yeah, I don't know. I can't wait till I have updates on that. You know, I feel like a lot of stuff is going to come out, move forward. I'll have a lot more to talk about on that end. But you have to do the legwork. And this is the thing too. I'm not like a lawyer. I'm not trained. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still learning in a way. But I've had a lot of the resources that I feel like a lot of average people don't have. You know, I have a very good job. I make very decent money. I'm working a lot for it, but I have the opportunity. You know, I can pay these court fees without a problem. I have like laser printers to keep printing off documents that I need to file. I have the money to certify mail things. I have a good computer. I have no card payment and a solid car to work with. I got a good, decent apartment for now that I can work out of and keep everything organized. A lot of people don't have just the computer skills alone to start doing this stuff, formatting legal documents, setting it up. You know, it's just one of those situations where maybe if I succeed, it just helps that person down the road who doesn't have these resources. Again, to anyone, I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice, but I will give personal advice on how I got around it. No offense to lawyers. I know you were going to law school for 2 years, but I hate lawyers at this point. Someone said, oh, did you ever go to law school? I was like, I don't think I could do it. I feel like I'm too nice and honest to try and do something like that after dealing with what I dealt with.
My law school literally threatened me and said, if you make a complaint, if you complain, appeal, or file a lawsuit, even if you win, you'll never be a lawyer in any bar. No bar in the country will ever accept you for character and fitness if you complain about this judge. And I said, why would me complaining about a judge who violated my rights and broke the law hinder my character and fitness? And then they just kept trying to gaslight me, kept trying to get me to sign documents saying that I understood that I can't get a refund on tuition. And I realized, like, okay, I'm going to a state school that basically is the state, and this judge is BFFs with these people, and they were trying to coerce me. And so, you know, I think that these people, a lot of them, they bank on our like fear. And I think that you made an excellent point by bringing up the resources thing, because like, you know, if you're in like a blessed position where, like you said, you're basically set up like a law firm, you have the printers, the everything, it's not an issue, you know, you're able to do it. For many people that can't afford it and are struggling and can't afford the filing fees, or they're getting blocked from fee waivers, things like that, they get to a dead end, and then they can't continue fighting because they're completely bankrupted and exhausted everything, and they become homeless and they turn to drugs, they turn to other things. And I think it highlights a big issue nationwide, which is part of what I would like to challenge moving forward. There's many things that I'd like to challenge, but one of them is I'd like to see all fees eliminated for courts nationwide. Like, there should be no fee to file a petition. There should be no fee. Like, if you want to file a motion to modify, it's $180. You want it served, it's another $60. You want this, you want certified, it's $9, whatever. Like, that adds up quick. And it's like, even if you're not paying the $500 an hour on top of it to the lawyer, if you're doing it yourself, you're still going to spend thousands. And so, like, I know myself, I had a business for many years as a notary, a mobile loan signing agent notary, where I was high-speed scanners, high-speed printers, like business grade. I needed that stuff in order to succeed. Just like with this, with anything, if you have the proper tools, it's necessary to have, you know, software to help you, like premium AIs and high-speed printers, high-speed scanners, storage. What about all these files? You know, people forget the cost of like cloud storage and external hard drives and all of this stuff and the certified letters. And it's like, okay. And if you go to a criminal case, if you're arrested, they'll say, if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you, and they give you a public defender, which we all know how they are, but they still are legally obligated to provide you one if you ask, right? But that's only in criminal court. And in some states, like in Connecticut, they say if you're in a DCF proceeding where you're being accused of neglect or abuse, or if they're trying to terminate your parental rights, that happens in either probate court or juvenile court, not in family court. And with that, there's a different standard. It's not the best interest of the child. It's a clear and convincing evidence standard. And it's not preponderance of the evidence. It's clear and convincing that they have to prove that you abused or neglect or whatever. And you're allowed to have a lawyer, you're allowed to have a trial and all that stuff. In family court, none of those rules exist. So they literally have so much discretion where they're taking advantage of that, where, you know, if family court doesn't get completely fully abolished in the next 5 years, you can guarantee you're going to see regulations that says that before they take away your custody, they need to give you an attorney without charging you. Like, there's one thing in the state that's free to file for, and that's a TRO. But if it's free to file a TRO, why does it cost $200 to file an emergency ex parte custody order, which you can also use to strip somebody of their rights, property, child, and stuff like that? And it's like, it should be uniform across the board. Like, we pay enough money in taxes where they can afford it. If people actually started auditing and seeing and watching what the money that you pay goes with these budgets and what they're doing with it, people would be disgusted. Like, and I think that because the news is so curated and, you know, aimed at what they want you to see and hear and know and look at and be distracted by, this is why now they're so offended by social media, because for the first time, people aren't so nervous about being judged. People aren't so scared of being embarrassed. Like, at first I thought, 2 years ago, I thought I can't go online and say that I lost my daughter. People are going to think that I did something wrong, that I'm a bad mom. This is going to make me look terrible. But once I did start talking about it, I realized, like, so many millions of others also going through it. And I realized, oh my God, this is like literally like a trafficking, extortion, racketeering circle.
Yeah. You said so many things that were like standing out to me. The one you had mentioned, the court fees. After she had filed the PFA hearing and it was ruled against me, they actually sent me a bill to pay the court costs for it. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So they get their money one way or the other. As far as the posting online you mentioned, that was the biggest fear. They make you think you're going to go to jail. And the judge who issued the PFA for my wife, I actually met somebody else who this judge locked him up for challenging like a medical bill or something for 24 hours. And then there's so many judge things. Like, I started looking up each of the judges and things that went on in the courthouse. One of the judges locked up a lawyer who was from Florida but licensed in Pennsylvania, who like raised an objection, and she locked him up for 24 hours. There was another judge who, in the family court system, the defendant started having a seizure, had actually a medical attendant that comes with her for these things. And she was arrested for contempt of court while she was having the seizure, taken to the hospital. She has some kind of physical damage because she was being restrained while seizing, and she got hurt somehow in the process. Then was arrested. This judge still sits behind the bench. And this was like 2 years ago that this is going on. Like, the power that these judges exert, something needs to change. Something needs to be put in check. Like, there has to be some kind of accountability. These judges thrive on their judicial immunity. They're like the whole mentality of nothing can happen to me. I can't be charged. You take that away, I guarantee things will change quickly. I mean, I don't know why a family court judge has judicial immunity. They're guilty. They can do illegal things just like anybody else in here. I know there's loopholes. Good luck filing that. And that's the thing. All these other things you file are still in the same district. There's everything I'm filing. I'm in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. My family court system's there. My civil suit is still in that same area. So what are the odds that the judge who gets this knows the judge who is dealing with the family court issue, knows the judge that issued the PFA? I'm not going to lie. It's unnerving thinking you're taking on this big court system and what could happen to you. I fear every day that, like, I'm going to go into court like in October and, oh, well, you're in contempt of court. We're going to take you into custody, stuff like that. And then I got to worry about my job, everything else that goes on. And there's situations where these family court judges, they can lock you up for up to 6 months without you going in front of a jury, without anything. They have too much power. And I wish I knew how to write laws. I wish I knew how to get laws placed. I wish I had the time to go and petition for bills and laws to get passed, because there's so many opportunities in the family court system, but there's nobody that has the leverage to go do that. We have a state rep in Pennsylvania, Jamie Flick, that's trying to change some of this stuff, but there's so many problems, and he's taking on one battle at a time. He's never going to fix all the problems. I hope more people get on board. There's more state reps that use this as an agenda to get elected, because they got my vote.
Yeah. And one thing that I think will help, like across the board with anything, is more federal oversight. And I think that these states need federal oversight across the board with anything to do with child protection, family court, domestic abuse, or anything that involves divorce and things like that. Because, without federal oversight, it's like a free for all. And I think that, talking about how you're afraid that they might get you and things like that for no reason. And they actually was a mom from California. She was picked up on a charge of custodial interference based on basically, whatever her ex said. She was held for over a year on with no bail. When she was first picked up, she was given a bail of $2 million cash. And then she was in Florida. They picked her up with her kids, took her kids, forced them to go back to the abuser they were disclosing sexual abuse and other things happening. They took the mom, extradited her from Florida back to California, where the charge came from. And then when she went to court in California, they removed the bond and told her she's being held without bail. So she sat in prison with no trial, no bail, no opportunity to get out, even if she had the money, for a year. And then finally they ended up, after she continued to try to push, and at the end, like, I interviewed her from jail on my podcast, and more people were pushing about her, and it kind of was like going really viral. And she had a viral following before she went to jail. She had hundreds of thousands of followers everywhere. So I think that putting on social media really makes a difference, because when they see, like, oh my God, all these people from all different states are sharing this. And, when you see that it's starting to go viral, and putting things on YouTube where it's like a global platform where it's going to be there forever. Like, even stuff where it's like they try to lie to our kids and say lies about us and brainwash, but like putting something on the internet showing your children that you love them and things like that, one day they can see that. And it's documenting this. And I think that the only tactics they have is to try to silence us, bankrupt us, retaliate, and use coercion. And, I'm sure that through all of this, maybe like I have PTSD, and I've asked for and I've gotten granted ADA accommodations in the state court for hearings to be on Zoom. If you ask for the same, under this federal disability law, any disability that qualifies, they have to accommodate. And if you simply ask for Zoom hearings, it doesn't distort the court process or cause a burden, because they're already set up for that. They do them all the time. And if you have that, you don't have those marshals standing behind you with their handcuffs jingling the keys, getting closer to you. As soon as you speak up, they start inching closer. One time, one got in my face. I go, yeah, if you have something to say it. And he looked like he wanted to slap me. Like then he threatened to arrest me if I didn't leave the clerk's office. So I was like, okay, goodbye. Like, but they're like hostile, because they know, and oh, God forbid you pull out a camera and you try to start recording, they start freaking out. And an abuser will always not want to be recorded. The person who's innocent will always want it recorded, and the bad one will say no recording, just like my ex.
It's funny. I did have I had actually an opposite issue with the court martial, the sheriff. When the PFA happened, I sat in the room because my wife and her attorney were hanging literally just outside the door, and I'm in distraught. My world was just taken from me. So the court reporter and the sheriff were sitting there, and they're just chilling, waiting. And finally, like after 5 minutes, I was talking to the court reporter. I said to the sheriff, "Am I safe to go out of here? They're hanging out there. Like, why are they still there? I'm waiting for them to walk away. They won't leave." And he goes and he looks out the door. And he sees them both standing there, and he's like, "Listen, I'll walk out with you just in case they try anything. Okay, get you down there." And like that was like such a red flag in my head. Like this guy's in there all the time. He sees things. So we're walking out and we're standing by the elevator, and he saw what happened in the courtroom. He knows. And my wife's lawyer comes over to the elevator, and she says, like, keep in mind, there's a temporary PFA for me, keeping me from my kids. I'm permanently kept away from my wife. The wife's lawyer says, "Listen, Brian, your kids are down in the daycare at a courtroom if you want to go down and see them before you leave." And I'm like, and thank God the sheriff said something, because I was waiting for something to happen. And I said, I can't go down there. You literally just had a restraining order placed on me that I can't go near my kids, and you're sending me down there? Like, what's wrong with you? And she just walked away, didn't say a word. And the sheriff goes, "That was a trap, man. If you would have went down to that courtroom, she would have had us come and arrest you. Like, that was the trap." And I'm like, why is this behavior allowed to happen? Like, she knew exactly what she was doing. She's an officer of the court. Like, she knew what she was doing. And I reported that to the bar, and of course, they just sloughed it off. Nothing to see here. And I just deal with that. I tell that story just so people know. If anyone else gets taken in, they're filing, going against a restraining order. I mean, especially with this woman, like I see this woman's name all the time. And apparently she always ends up in front of the same two judges with these PFA filings, which I've heard a little bit about, like judge shopping, file PFAs on a certain day. I don't know how that works exactly, but it was just coincidental that these two attorneys constantly come up with all her cases when I was looking online. But yeah, they'll try anything and everything. If I would have gotten arrested for going near my kids, who knows? I would have ended up in jail. I wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. You got to protect yourself. Just be cautious, because if they get you, it's game over. You're not going to be able to fight for your house. You're not going to be able to fight for your children. You're going to lose your resources. You may lose your job. Who knows what will happen from there? I have like background checks and childhood clearances. And if I get arrested for a PFA violation, that shows up, and then I'm stuck. Who knows what's going to happen afterwards? So.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of times people forget, like the clerks are also in on it, because the clerks will get the filing from such and such attorney and immediately put it on the desk of such and such judge when it's supposed to be random and things like that. And, it's like, I remember when we like being a kid, like I was growing up in the 90s and like hearing about, oh, my parents got divorced, this and that. Like people would get a divorce, it would be finalized, and that was it. Alimony was set, child support was set, whatever it was final. And once it was final, that was it. Now it's never final. It continues to stay going for years and years and years, where you can always go back and modify. You can always go back and file a contempt. You can always go back and continue to harass the person and drag them through the court system for 18 years. And then even then they go back asking for attorney's fees and money for college and things like that, where they're making it into a money-making machine. Because think about it. If you could just go see a mediator, a husband and a wife sits down with the mediator, maybe they each have their lawyer there. They sit there for 3 hours. They have a discussion. They throw it all on the table. They see what each person has to lose, and then they make a decision. At that point, both parents win, because they're able to pay less money, get something that they negotiate, where you have to give some to get some. Where now it's like you see so many situations where it's like one parent having all the control and the other parent having nothing and literally no access and no ability to get their kids. And like, that's like what I'm in. And it certainly wasn't like that pre-COVID, certainly wasn't like that in 2016 when I entered the system. So like for it to be like this now, it shows like things are getting much worse. And yes, there's more people speaking up now. And I hope more people are inspired to speak up, because a lot of people are scared of retaliation. People, even lawyers, have said to me, I know your child's being abused, but I can't go against this judge because this is my bread and butter. And if I go against her with you, I'll never win a case again. So it's like they acknowledge the retaliation, when really like her saying that is grounds for her to be arrested, indicted on a federal offense, her to lose her bar license. But she's still prancing around, getting paid, making money, making millions, and destroying lives. And so it's like, I think that, you know, the best thing that you're doing is speaking up, building a platform, and educating yourself. Like you said, like most of the lawyers, like in law school, they don't teach you how to be a lawyer. They teach you basic things that are needed, but everything else is like constantly changing. The laws are changing by the day, by the year. So it's like no lawyer is going to sit there and memorize the laws. You know, they're going to know how to apply the laws. They're going to know how to think strategically, how to take a problem and analyze it and think like analytically. So, you know, it's like a lot of these lawyers, they are just in a niche field. You know, maybe they'll go be a lawyer. They do personal injury. They only ever deal with car accidents. They don't have any idea what it's like to actually study the Supreme Court decisions and look into these like landmark cases and stuff like that. So you're already like doing what the lawyers do. And when I was interning, I interned at a firm. The lawyer literally told me, okay, you're going to write this lawsuit. Here's what I want you to do. Take this other lawsuit that we did last time, erase his name, put the new guy's name, and change the facts that need to be changed. And then when you're done, give it to me and I'll check it and I'll sign it when it's ready. And I was like, okay. And I did one. I'm like, now what? He's like, oh, you're done already? Okay, now you can do these. Next thing you know, I'm banging out like 10 lawsuits a day. He's all bragging about me to all the other lawyers in the firm. Like, oh my God, she's so good, this and that. But then as soon as I filed a federal RICO lawsuit against the state and all the judges and had all these defendants, and it's such a small state. After that, even though I paid $5,000 to do that internship and have it count for 4 credits in law school over the summer, they refused to sign my slip at the end for me to be able to get credit. And I still paid the full $5,000 to do that. And I never got credit. And they used me for free labor for the whole entire summer, getting all that high efficiency work out of me. So I'm not going to just let that go. They can't just be like, oh, well, we don't like the fact that she's getting bad attention, so we're just going to stop talking to her completely. And that attorney, he represented me in the past for 2 different car accident cases where he took the case on a contingency basis. I didn't pay him a single cent. He sent me to the best doctors. He got me a great settlement at the end. And I thought he was a good lawyer. But as soon as it came between stick up for what's right or kick me to the curb and take advantage of the fact that you just basically stole $5 grand from me, he's like, I'll steal the $5 grand. I don't care about you. And that's it. And our 20-year relationship gone. No more relationship as me working for him or as a former client. And so it's like, okay. And then now what am I going to do? Sue him in the same, and you know what? I'll never forget it. This was like a week after I lost my daughter in the same corrupt court. I was scheduled to start my internship at this firm, like right after they took my daughter. And I was so distraught, but I was still like pulling myself together. And I was like, I need to keep going to my classes. I need to keep going. And so I didn't say anything to them about it. And I went with them, and it's like the family court's on the 3rd floor. And like this like civil court thing was like on like the 5th floor or whatever. So I was up there with them, and the lawyer's like, you're gonna shadow me for the day in the courthouse. I'm like, okay, great. And he does personal injury. So it's like a lot of times there's insurance companies involved, and the insurance company will hire an attorney to represent the claim. So this guy was going against a lady who she flew in from like Chicago or something. She paid all this money for travel and hotel and everything to come to court to be able to have this like arbitration day or whatever. He goes, watch this. I can make the judge do anything I want. I'm going to make him waste her time and extend this for another like 3 months. He goes in with the judge, talks to him, comes back, says to the lady, the other lawyer, he goes, oh, yep, bad news. He just said he gave you a continuance September, and this was in June. And the lady had like waited already for this. And she's like, really? He's like, oh, like the lady was like, couldn't believe it. And he's like, yep, sorry. As soon as the lady left, he starts laughing. He's all making fun of her with the judge. He's like, this judge will do anything I say. I run this courthouse, all cocky. And I'm just like, okay. And then I'm just didn't say anything. Sitting there all quiet, all nice, smiling. There was another intern from one of the other law schools there as well with one of the other lawyers. And he was really quiet. He didn't say anything. At one point we'd go in the judge's chambers. So then it was like every time a different lawyer was ready from ours to go in for that case, We would go sit in the judge's chambers, have a 10-minute talk, and then go out. So all of this stuff is like off the record. You should have heard the things the judge was saying. He was talking so unprofessional. He was swearing. He was talking about these cases like they're nothing. Oh, what's the amount in the medical records? Okay, what's the billing? Oh, da 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 da. They were like, well, we want 100,000. He's like, I don't care. Get out of my office. Like the way he was talking was just terrible and disrespectful and everything. So the next day, I go back to the law firm for my shift or whatever, and I go and talk to the lawyer. He goes, by the way, the judge said you're not allowed to come back anymore ever again to court. And I was like, why? I was like, like what? And he's like, yeah, he tries to give some BS excuse. He's like, oh, because they didn't know that you were coming, and because he was like swearing and he was being unprofessional, and he felt like after he asked me who was that and this and that, and he felt like it's not right or whatever. And I was like, oh, so but the other intern was there from the other law school, and I was like, and then he like, you could tell like the attitude shift. Like he was almost like, oh, don't call me out. And so then I was just like, okay, whatever. Like I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to start a problem. I was like, okay. But inside I knew as soon as he found out who I was, there's not a single person in that courthouse who doesn't know who I am, because the judge completely made everybody hate me and blacklisted me and made it into a spectacle. So it's like, as soon as he sees that, oh, this is the girl that judge hates, no, don't let her back here. She can't be in chambers and see what's going on behind the scenes. But now I personally witnessed him admitting to doing corruption with the judge to get his way and saying he does it all the time. And so it's like, okay, no wonder you guys don't want me to see this.
Yeah. And you're already, like you said, you're blacklisted now. So it's like anything you try and do through the court system is just going to be horrible. So sorry you had to go through that, but you're fighting your own uphill battle with all of this.
Yeah. And ultimately, like I had to basically like leave the jurisdiction, because otherwise it's a losing battle. So sometimes it takes like taking it federal or taking it to a different county or whatever you have to do to escape that little tight knit hold that they have, that chokehold that they have in that county.
Yeah, that's where like I couldn't get out of the county as far as my civil trial. And that's part of it when you file these suits. You have to, so-and-so lives in this county, so-and-so lives in this county. It falls within that. We're both in the same county. That's where I figured just a jury of my people is my best shot for now. Get in front of them, just start telling the story. And like, again, I don't really get much objection when people see what's going on. I don't anticipate they're going to be like, oh, he's just wrong or whatever. I just feel like there will be a true personal opinion. They will see what'll happen, and it'll be like, all right, now I have leverage. If I'm essentially suing her for $500,000 between the amount of child support I'll pay, being removed from my home, everything that's happened to me, it'll be enough to curb it into a settlement with her. She's like, all right, well, now you're going to give me your share of the house. I'm going to get my home back. Now child support's going to be this, because you're never going to be able to pay me $500,000. And if it comes to like, listen, if you want to fill out an affidavit and testify in court to your attorney running this whole process, you want to testify a criminal conspiracy, you want to testify she knowingly was trying to have me arrested and do this whole silver bullet process, maybe we can settle bigger, because your attorney's law firm has a lot more money than you do, and you will come out on top. And my wife's narcissistic enough to probably go down that road. She's looking out for number one, just like every lawyer does. Their number one client is themselves. She's the same way. I don't know. I'm nowhere near that part as far as gathering the evidence. I have to get my civil trial in front of a jury, and it has to happen within a certain time frame, because you have this 2-year statute of limitations that you're working with, and the courts do not move quickly. The courts only move quickly when it's incentivized for them. Again, these PFA hearings, they happen within a week. The support, when you're going for child support, the initial hearing that we have in front of the court conference officer with the default judgment in the beginning happens very quickly. They make sure that this money starts moving. When it comes time to challenge anything, it's months and months and months and months and months. Like, I don't anticipate getting a response for 6 months from this civil trial. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to forget about it. I'm not going to take my foot off the gas. I'm just going to slowly sit here, persevere. And the other part of it is it does take the work. You can't sit here and talk about, oh, I'm going to sue you. You hear people all day, I'm going to sue someone, I'm going to own this, blah, blah, blah. Sit there. I don't care if it's like you're staying up late, you're analyzing one paragraph and filing something, that's what you have to do. Get it submitted and just keep moving forward. So anybody that's even thinking about it, if you're on the fence, not sure, just do it. You know, again, the only thing you have to lose, like you really don't have anything to lose, but if you don't try or don't do it, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to keep being a victim. You're not going to gain any leverage. You're going to go into court. You're going to take the beating. The judge is going to say this to you, say this to you. Well, because you're ruled against this, and it's just not worth it. It's, you know, have a purpose. You're probably sitting around with a lot of free time on your hands anyway. Put that time to good use. Keep your mind busy and just be productive.
Yeah. And it's like after a certain point, people have to stop being on the defense and start being on the offense, because at the end of the day, it's like, look, you're not scared about a trial. They're trying to think of how they can deny you that fair day in court, because they know you'll lay out your case and prove it. That's what they're scared of. So, you know, you're right. You know, the law's on your side, the facts are on your side, and what they're doing is corrupt. So all you can do is continue to be assertive and kind of just say like, no, like you have the upper hand, and they can play this game all they want, but eventually somebody's going to have to give in. So I do think that also, you know, it's good that you're teaching yourself, and, you know, it's somebody who never went to law school, never had any experience in the law, is able to just pick up books and read and study and look up online. And a lot of people don't realize too, there's law libraries. Most states have law libraries where you can go for free and access like things like Pacer and do legal research and stuff like that. And even the librarians can help you with, you know, how to research a certain thing and find specific stuff. So just using whatever resources you have. There's a lot of free resources on the internet. There's a lot of good resources and stuff. And I think that people just need to share their experiences with each other, and also trying to like find maybe others from your county who've been victimized by the same judges or the same lawyers or stuff like that. Because if you find 2-3 other families that have also been harmed by the same judge, now you have a pattern.
Yes. That's one of the guys that got me kickstarted on doing a lot of this stuff on my own. The only reason I bumped into him is because he was part of the same judge. This was the judge that locked him up for 24 hours. And he had just mentioned her name once online. And that's how I was able to find this guy. I was looking for people that have dealt with this judge, corruption. And he's been going through this for years with this court system. And he got me kickstarted. I mean, the internet is a beautiful thing. People can love AI, hate AI, but if you're not using AI in some way these days, you know, it's almost like 1,000 minds coming together, rewording your statements. I might make an argument or an objection that is valid, but it sounds like gibberish because I'm not prepared to articulate it in the proper way. And I'll type my objection in the AI, and they will write it in such a professional manner. And I'm like, man, I intimidated myself there. Like, that was great. Just to help you along the way. And it may not be perfect. You're going to make some mistakes on the way. AI might like cite something that's improper. Just keep reading what they're doing. You know, it's not a perfect system. But again, I started off talking about, I'm pretty sure her lawyer is using AI to prepare some of this stuff. It's too long. There's too many things. Some of it sounds repetitive. And I'm like, I almost felt like he fed the stuff I filed and just said, prepare a 20-page objection list. And that's what is done here. Again, it's going to be a lot of back and forth in the beginning. They're just trying to see who can outsmart the other, who can sway the judge before it gets to trial. But just put anything down. You know, you can't not respond to this stuff. Even if you feel like your argument's not good, just respond in any way, because you're going to lose. Just keep fighting the battle.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned default judgment. People forget a lot of times lawyers also file for summary judgment, where before the hearing even happens, they'll say, look, it doesn't matter what they said in their objection or their motion to dismiss. We agree on these facts, and these facts are all undisputed. Therefore, I want you to issue a summary judgment and grant this, because nobody is objecting to these facts, which prove my case. And so these are the kind of things where it's like these big firms and stuff like that, they always have these tactics and techniques, but you can like think about what's the most expensive, high-powered firm in your area, and then go look up all the cases that they've had and see how they write their motions, see how these professional firms draft their documents, and you can use those as samples. And you can go right to the courthouse and go in the computers and look up cases and stuff too, and say, okay, they had a great lawyer. Let me look up his complaint. How did he draft it? and I'll use that as a model for doing mine. So
the experts, yeah.
exactly. But yeah, so would you encourage any parents in Pennsylvania to reach out to you if they hear this and they see that they want to talk to you, share information, and maybe they might have the same experience?
Yeah, it's ironic because I talked about this TikTok in the beginning. I get messages all the time. It's crazy. It's very hard to keep up with some of them. And I'm not going to have the answers for everybody's case. You know, everyone's case is going to be a little bit different. Some people might not have a valid argument wanting me to come up with an answer for them. And I'm not that guy. I'm not the lawyer that's going to create something. I just want people to see what I'm doing. Start browsing ideas, put something out there, you know, something might stick. You don't know. The biggest thing I say I have going for me is that I am the victim. I am telling the truth. You know, all this stuff that's going on, you know, her lawyer has to fight the truth, which is kind of kept me going. You know, I just want to get my story out there. Again, with the TikTok, the more people know it, the more people comment on my situation. It puts little things out there like, oh, maybe I should have considered this. Or you just talked about the summary judgment. You know, maybe I should consider this. You're not going to have all the answers yourself. That's the one thing. The more people that are in the loop, the more people that are thinking about your case, the more people suggest different ideas. And not every idea is going to work for me. I have people commenting with, take this to the federal court, take this, you know, color of law violations, and they'll take me in separate directions. Now, when I filed my motion to dismiss our last suit about my wife's filing contempt of court, trying to take all my visitation rights away, I did touch on color of law violations and First Amendment rights, how the gag orders are illegal. So when we came to the actual video hearing, the preliminary hearing, the judge, she didn't attack me for posting anything. She didn't try and come after me or post any more threats. She came at it in a more, what's it going to take to get the social media posting to stop? Like, not that you were wrong. Like, we just don't want any more of it at this point. And I'm like, all right, it did make a difference. Maybe something in there stuck. The judge saw this and she now knows that she can't hold me accountable to these illegal gag orders. The way I view a gag order now is essentially, if the judge ordered me, I had to cut a finger off as punishment or something for doing something. It's an illegal order. They can't uphold an illegal order. They can't arrest me for not cutting off a finger. The same way they can't arrest me for not honoring an illegal gag order that doesn't exist. So I'm not going to lie. I was very nervous about like opposing these gag orders. I think about it every day. Were they going to try and do it? But I couldn't sit back and just take it anymore. You know, I had to stand up and say it. And for anyone, like, I don't know that reaching out to me directly for advice is going to give you the answer. But like putting it out there for other people to comment, just tell your story, seeking advice. Like, yeah, I'd love to give my take on it. If I think you don't have a leg to stand on with some of the stuff, which some people do send me frivolous stuff, I'll say that to you. But I don't think I should be their resource person. Like, I'm not the legal expert. I'm just an average person like you and everybody else out there, just trying to stand up for the court system. And I think everyone, like you probably know somebody along the way who's going through it in some other similar way. Share your story with them, talk in person, see what they went through, just start collaborating. The more minds that work at this, the better your outcome is likely to be.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for your time and everything that you shared. And just in case anybody wants to see you on TikTok or follow you, it's Family Court Fraud.
Family Court Fraud, which I'm going to get persecuted for that, I'm sure.
Might have to change that username later, but for now, Family Court Fraud on TikTok. And are you on YouTube or anything else?
So I created an account for every platform. One of the guys I follow, the unmarried father, I talked to him briefly, like through a couple messages. He said, if you're going to do one, do them all. And he said he'll post on one platform and he gets like 100,000 views on this, then he'll post on another one and he might get like 1,000 views. He doesn't know the rhyme or reason sometimes, so he just tries to put it out there. TikTok was just the one that kind of took off for me. Again, it wasn't planned, it wasn't expected, but it just, the views and the responses and the comments just started taking off. So I'm probably most active in checking that. But anywhere, if you stumble upon me, just send a message. Feel free. I'll always try and reply to everybody.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Thank you so much. Take care.